Governor's office more important? We'll go ahead and start. I apologize for the delay. As we all know, the slow start of the session has quickly caught up with us, and there are a lot of committee meetings. Can y'all hear me? Is it okay? Going on right now. So, again, I apologize for the tardiness, but we'll go ahead and start. On our agenda today, we're gonna hear from the university system. We're gonna hear from our Georgia Public Library System, Georgia Military College, and then the Technical College. So if you will, come up and talk to us a little bit about our big budget, your request, and then obviously I think we'll have a few questions. I know there are some issues that we're trying to deal with this year, and we may do a little deeper dive into some of those issues as we get through going through your respective budgets. I believe it's Tracy. Yeah.
And I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Get a little closer. I don't know if our volume. Let me look at our volume. Try that.
How about now?
Is
that better?
Much better. Much better.
And if I go off, just let me know. So hopefully each of you have a one-pager. What I'd like to do is work from the one-pager. As you know, we have 22 programs that's a part of the Board of Regents budget. The largest by far is our teaching budget. And so what I'd like to do is start with the teaching budget and then move to the organized activities, or what we refer to as the B units, and just work from the sheet. This sheet does include all of the items that are included in the tracking sheet, and the tracking reference numbers are on the left-hand side. So if you're fine with that, I'll work from the one-pager. Excuse me. So the first item, which is 41.18.4, is the $82 million that's being recommended for enrollment formula growth. As you know, we are funded by a funding formula. The main inputs of the formula are credit hour production from our students, as well as square footage across our campuses and health costs. So the $82 million reflects the funding needed to support the 328,000 plus students that across the university system. Mainly those funds are used for faculty and all the support services that go in providing the instruction and the educational experience for those students. The next line item is $3.5 million in maintenance and operation. Those funds are provided by the state to support any new square footage across our campuses. So as we grow, and it's for academic space, so as we grow our academic space across our campuses, the formula provides for funding in support of this, and that covers things like utilities, grounds, maintenance, and all the workers that provide that support for those facilities. The next line item represents the 2% merit increase that the governor has recommended for all state agencies. For us, it comes to $44.2 million for the teaching program. And we're very thankful. These funds support merit and retention. And as you know, one of our major initiatives has been to attract and retain top faculty across the university system. And so these funds will go a long way in providing for that. The next item is for the teachers' retirement system. These funds are to support the contribution rate increase that was approved by the TRS board. I think the rate went from 20.9% to 21.14%. So the $1.89 million is the state share in support of that increase. The next line item, which is 41.18.6, is for our health insurance and retiree health insurance benefits. That's $6.8 million, and that's the state share of to support the increased health care cost for the upcoming fiscal year. 41.18.3. Let me know if you need me to back up.
No, I apologize. I was just trying to tie in a number.
Oh, okay, okay. 41.18.3 is the $3.4 million for the insurance premiums for DOAS. This adjustment is seen across all state agencies. It includes funding to support workers' comp, liability, unemployment, and property insurance. And then finally, the last item in our teaching program is actually a reduction. It's the continued plan of the phase-out plan for the startup funds that were provided to Georgia Gwinnett College when the college first started back in 2006. It takes time to grow funding through the formula funding, and so the state saw fit to provide startup funds. So beginning 6 years ago, we started a phase-out plan of those funds, and this represents year 6 of 7 of that phase-out plan.
How are we doing on, is the college doing after this startup and in this last year?
Yeah, the college has continued to grow over the last, 12, 13 years. Has it been 13 years now?
No.
Yeah, they've had continuous growth. They're kind of starting to flatten a little bit right at the 12,000 mark, but they have continually received new funding through the formula because of their growth. So again, the formula funds that support the teaching program totaled $141 million. And if there are no questions on the teaching program, I will move on to the other organized activities, or what we refer to as the B units.
Let me make sure the committee may do well. Committee, any questions in this section? All right.
Okay, this one I'm going to take a little bit more time. Some of it's a little technical. But the first 3 line items on the one-pager basically summarize the 3 elements that spread across all of the B units, and that is the funding that's being provided for merit, the funding that's being provided for health insurance, and the funding that's being provided for TRS across all of the programs. And so you'll see those summarized on the one-pager on the first 3 items. So the next item is 41.1.3, which is our agriculture experiment station. This is actually the elimination of funding in the amount of $223,000. In fiscal year 19, the state provided UGA funding for whitefly management research. That research is underway. The College of Agriculture at UGA is working on research trying to attack the whitefly issue that was going on in the state, and so they leverage that funding across 3 departments, and they're making a dent in that space, but we've expected that funding to come out of the budget in FY20 because it was one-time in nature. The next item, 41.1.5 and 41.3.5, represents funding for 3 faculty positions. These positions are split between the Agriculture Experiment Station and the Cooperative Experiment Extension Services Program, So 2 of the positions will focus on precision agriculture, and 1 is for a vegetable horticulturist. So we grow over 40 different types of vegetables commercially in Georgia, and so there's a great need for both research and education in this industry to stay ahead of the challenges, and so shoring up additional positions in this space will help tremendously. Addition in precision agriculture, this is a high-tech field. It's becoming more innovative and technology-driven, and so what this position is intended to do is really develop new technologies in this space, and so those are the purpose of those 3 new positions. Moving on to 41.3.3, you'll see $656,000 in new funding for 12 extension educator positions. So the extension educators are bachelor's level employees who work very closely with extension faculty to coordinate extension programs and spend at least half their time in the field conducting educational programming. So these funds would be provided to UGA through the extension program for the upcoming fiscal year. 41.5.3 is for forestry cooperative extension. Again, this is to eliminate one-time funds that were provided in fiscal year 19. Again, we expect this reduction because the funding was one-time in nature. These funds were provided mainly for maintenance, repair. There's a lot of roof replacements that are actually in process now on some of the boat sheds and labs and sawmills. There's also some painting and brick sealing that's occurring presently. We expect to wrap that up in the current fiscal year, and those funding will be returned to the state in the FY20 budget. The next item, 41.8.3 and 4, we'll take those together because they both are in support of the Augusta University Cyber Innovation and Training Center. It's a total increase of $1.38 million for operations and equipment. And so the new space, it's a high-tech space that features, there's a cyber range there, an incubator and accelerator program that fosters internship, collaborative space. It's a really neat, I'm sure most of you, hopefully most of you have gotten a chance to go visit both of the facilities. It's 332,000 square feet over two buildings. When the FY19 budget was developed, the second building really hadn't been developed or contemplated, and so these funds are really to shore up some of the needs of Building 2, mainly for security, as well as the equipment and networking that needs to take place in the second facility. And so that's the purpose, the main purpose of the $1.3 million. Item number 41.14.3 is $197,000 for GPLS. It's tied directly to the funding formula, which reflects a projected population increase of 129,000 citizens. And our state librarian, Julie Walker, is actually here today, and she's going to speak to you a bit more about the formula and some of the other items in the budget for GPLS. Item 41.15.4 is a reduction, again, of $1.9 million for the Health Professions Initiative. About 6 years ago, the university system was provided funding. There was a plan for about a 5-year plan to increase the number of graduate medical education slots across the state. I think our audit has recently come out. We have actually exceeded the target. We're projecting 613 new slots by 2025. We've partnered so far with 8 hospitals, and so this reduction is just taking back the funding. The program is not over. Still lots of work to be done, but from a state funding perspective, the dollars can be returned to the state.
So let me. I'm going to elaborate. Now, was this for nursing? What was
there were 2 components. There was a GME component and a nursing component. The nursing component was more geared toward faculty, and the development and retention of faculty nursing.
Okay, and then speak on the other.
The nursing.
No, the other. You said there were 2.
Graduate medical education.
Okay, yes.
And so that's where we partnered with several hospitals to stand up residency programs across the state. The goal was originally 400 slots, and like I said, based on where we are today, the best projection is 613 slots. And so the hope is that the more residency slots that we have here in Georgia, people do their residency here, they'll live and stay in Georgia.
I want to applaud everyone for that. Obviously, healthcare is at the top of the list, and in some parts of Georgia, has been mentioned in even floor discussions. It's a desert. Let me ask you this: how are our partners in healthcare, some of our hospitals, are they reacting well to this? Are they cooperating, or because I know I've got quite frankly, one that hits home that has not cooperated, and seems reluctant to take on. And become a partner in this so that we can make sure that we have more residencies and more doctors in our areas.
I will say most, and this has been a project underway for about 5 years now, most of the larger hospitals that didn't have programs already were very cooperative. Some of the smaller hospitals, one didn't have the patient base and really didn't have, because it did require matching funds, didn't have the funding to participate, but for the most part, hospitals have cooperated. We are having discussions with the hospital now. It would be the final hospital under this program in FY19 if we can make a connection there. But for the most part,
yeah. I will let you know. I know in the particular issue that I'm talking about, they had no problem, filling these spots and adding residency spots to, a major hospital in the Metro Atlanta area. But when it came time to doing this outside the Metro Atlanta area, where perhaps the need is more, they had a hard time doing it.
Yeah, and Dr. Shelley Nuss, I wish she were here, she could speak to this, but there was a challenge, especially in rural South Georgia, partnering with hospitals. And again, some of it was they just didn't have the patient base that was required to even stand up a residency program. We are thinking about ways to impact rural Georgia in a different way. I think some of the ideas have to do with just rotations. Maybe if we can get, residents down there and rotate at those hospitals and do a portion of their time there, that would be helpful. But unfortunately, many of the hospitals in rural South Georgia just could not participate.
Well, ours is borderline rural, borderline, metro, and I know for a fact that our hospital generates a lot of revenue that goes back into the system, the major hospital system, and very disappointed at the effort that some of our hospitals, their level of cooperation and quite frankly, they seem to want to put this back on, at the local level, wanting to generate, we don't have the funds to do this or some excuse. When we all at a state level are trying to implement and help these programs grow, that may speak a lot to what's going on around the Capitol and the different discussions that are going on today. So,
but we're going to still figure out ways to try to impact the state at large. I mean, we're not going to stop. So.
All right. I'm sorry.
I got
off on.
We're almost to the end. So, 41 point.
I'm sorry. We got one question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's been brought to my attention by my local hospital, Georgia Southwestern State University, that we're having problems placing our nurses slots for doing their clinicals. And some of the issue has been out-of-state schools getting those slots. Now, I don't have all the information, but that was mentioned to me a while back by the president of the university, and he's trying to get some more information, but it was out-of-state schools actually having slots in the state of Georgia. And I'm not sure if they were private schools. I don't have all the details, but it was out-of-state.
I will reach out to Dr. Weaver. I'm interested because I'm wondering, when I hear that, are they paying the hospitals? Like, what are they doing to incent the hospitals to?
I wish I had more information.
I will we'll look into that some more.
Thank you.
Okay.
Seems to be a common theme here: incentive and money versus trying to look at what's best for Georgia. And let's make sure that we have health care providers all over the state.
Yeah, may I?
Yes.
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, if I may indulge, I'd be remiss if I did not recognize my wife that just got here. It's Valentine's Day, and I just want to make sure that I'm in her good graces. Thank you, Mama.
Representative Chokus, you did better than me. I got up today and forgot that it was Valentine's Day.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. We will finish, and then we may have a few questions in regards to another topic we're trying to discuss in general.
All right, sounds good. Two more items here. 41.16.4 is $3,000. This is an increase to cover the dues, the increase in dues to SREB, the Southern Regional Education Board dues. And finally, you'll see a yes item on 41.19.4. What this means, last year, Vet Med Experiment Station was provided $900,000 for the Food Animal Hall and Facility in Tifton. These funds were used appropriately in the current fiscal year, but they were one-time in nature. The yes item is basically saying that the budget would allow these funds to be retained by Vet Med for new projects. Some of those include $300,000 for one-time funding for 20 poultry isolation units, $300,000 to increase the contract with Vet Diagnostic Lab, and additional money for maintenance and operations. So it's just, rather than taking it out and putting it back in, it's just kind of letting them continue with very specific projects identified.
Well, thank you. I know that certainly the poultry industry is huge, as evidenced by the difficulty to get a hotel right now in Georgia due to the the worldwide meeting of all and everybody concerned with poultry and the industry. So we appreciate and know how important that is to Georgia.
Thank you.
So, yeah,
oh.
go ahead. I'm sorry. Go
I
ahead.
was going to say that really concludes we have pass-through items here, but both Georgia Military College is actually here to speak to those. And if we can talk about operating, if you want to move on to capital, I'll leave that up to you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Yes. If you can go into to capital if you.
Okay. So
Yes.
on the reverse side of your document, it includes all of the capital items that were recommended by the governor. They're basically 3 sections. You'll see $7.9 million in equipment for 3 projects. These are under construction or renovation at these 3 campuses, and these funds will be needed in FY20 once these projects are complete to fully equip these facilities. The next section are the 6 construction projects that were recommended at Georgia College and State, Georgia State University, Kennesaw, Middle Georgia, University of North Georgia, and University of West Georgia. So I can provide a little detail if you want about each project, but again, those are the projects that were recommended in the governor's recommendations. And finally, I do want to talk a little bit about major repair and renovation. We always put in a plug for this. These are the funds, these are the one pot of money that it helps every institution. We take these funds in, we allocate them across our institutions, and it really helps to maintain the existing facilities. We spend money on HVAC systems. I mean, all the things, it's not, you can't put someone's name on it, but it's the things that keep our existing facilities in really good condition, and it really helps minimize the need for new construction going forward. And so always just wanted to highlight the importance of those funds. And then Georgia Research Alliance, there's money in there for equipment and R&D infrastructure. And again, the funding for Georgia Military College will be discussed by our representatives here.
Okay. I'm sorry, I don't know if that's my wife probably calling it. No, I'm just kidding. She's go real quick, the Georgia Research Alliance equipment, R&D infrastructure, quick word on that.
I think, is Susan here? Sure, I'm here. Hi, how to see you.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for asking. That is for the 24 new eminent scholars that we've recruited since 2015.
Okay.
To help outfit their labs once they come here. We partner with the university. That $5 million won't come close to capturing everything that they need, but we make multi-year investments, and that would be a good start for us to outfit labs.
Well, I appreciate that. I know Georgia's leading the way in a lot of research. Our research institutions are, quite frankly, they put us above a lot of other states.
They do.
And make us a very, very attractive
They do.
state.
And many of those 24, most of those 24 are working in health-related areas and tackling diseases and
Seems to be a theme here.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Representative Chokas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When you were talking about the eminent scholars, in the past, eminent scholars was a match where local funds were raised, and then is that still the case, or is it all state money?
No, that is still the case. We have 73 permanently endowed chairs where the state has committed $750,000 to that permanent endowment. The university raises at least that much from private sources. So it creates a permanent endowment. We've actually had about 35 of these scholars retire and move on. We're able to hire new eminent scholars, not raise a new endowment, but just reuse that one. And many of the investments have grown from that original $1.5 million to $3 million now. And that's in keeping with what other states and universities are doing. Endowments, the proceeds of those really help pay for research infrastructure, for these scholars. So we haven't had new endowment money in several years, but we do constantly ask for new lab infrastructure for the new scholars. We just recruited a hypertension scholar to Augusta University, and we'll be looking for some equipment for him.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Real quick, and again, I think everyone is very conscientious of one of the things that I think this General Assembly is going to deal with. Obviously, the governor's recommendation as we look into dual enrollment. A very, very successful program, one that is working well, but one that has, year over year, increased, $20 million or so year after year after year. So with that, obviously y'all have been at yesterday's meeting, but let's talk a little bit about maybe USG's participation in dual enrollment. A little bit about what we're seeing here. For instance, dual enrollment, the $25 credit hour for books and materials. I know that the chancellor's spoken to us about digital textbook initiatives for core classes, which allows our students to have free textbooks. What do the book fees for dual enrollment go towards in those cases where we are using that digital online, text or curriculum that's digitally there? What are we seeing with those fees in those cases?
So what we've been able to do, so basically the $25 per credit hour equates to about $75 per course per student. So prior to our movement to the open access and free textbooks, a lot of our institutions, we were having to buy those books for the students, and so they were trying to come up with creative ideas, and most of those textbooks cost more than $75, which was at a loss, pretty substantial loss in the earlier years to our institutions. We think what the free textbook and the balance, because not all courses are free. I mean, we're moving more and more and more into that space, but there's still a cost to textbooks for many of our courses. And so we think that what we're probably finding is balance to break even. What I will do is probably survey our institutions to get more data on how is it actually panning out, for every student that you're having to buy a book for versus one that they're being provided for free. How does the income that's coming in from the dual enrollment program compare to that? And so we're going to pull together a survey and try to get you more specifics on that. I don't think it's a windfall because, like I said, there is still a cost for those courses that have books, that have textbook requirements.
Well, I would certainly be interested. I think this committee would be interested in that information. Certainly as we look at ways to curtail the rising cost of dual enrollment, because quite frankly we want to protect it. And I would say this for everyone in the room, help us protect it. And if there are ways in which we can, we're using this case using technology and putting curriculum or in a digital format and passing those savings along, we need to make sure we identify those savings, and make sure that we're constantly measuring. Okay. So if you could do that, I would greatly appreciate that. My other question is if a dual enrollment student is only taking courses online in a semester, how does the student fee, paid for by the program, help them? In other words, if it's strictly an online class, and we've got this fee, what's the fee used for, and how is that helping the student?
Well, I think, if I'm not mistaken, is the fee $25?
Only $50.
$50. Thank you. I'm sorry. $50 per student per semester. It depends. The student still has access to come on campus and participate in any activity, utilize the facilities, and whether or not they're engaging in that, I'd have to find out more information if the institutions even track that. I will say it does help offset the fact that for the students who do come face-to-face and participate, the fees generally range from somewhere from $500 to $1,000 depending on what campus that you attend. And so right now, if a student is attending a campus where the fees are $500, we're getting $50, and the college is having to absorb the difference. So it kind of helps in total, but I think the fact that they have access, they are not prohibited from coming on campus. They can participate in games. They can use the facilities. I think it just helps the program at large.
Well, and again, I appreciate that. I want to make sure, though, I think this committee is very, very interested in, trying to find out, and we've heard, stories, anecdotal information regarding, hey, there are online courses the student has never, ever stepped foot on a college campus.
So we have some data. There's about, of the 13,000 students that are currently dually enrolled at our institutions right now, I think 1,600 are fully online. The rest are either face-to-face or experiencing some sort of hybrid experience. This is Dr. Tristan Denley. He's
How are you
he's
doing,
our
Tristan?
Chief Academic Officer, so if you want to add anything to that.
I did just want to make sure that you understood Tracy's exactly right, that when a student is fully enrolled online, they not only are they able to use all of the resources of the university, actually, so SAC-COC insists that we provide all of the wraparound services to all students, no matter whether they're dual enrollment or any other enrollment, and whether they're online or face-to-face or any other modality. So, as you say, it may well be the case that we have a student who is taking a course entirely online, and they maybe don't actually set foot physically on a campus, but on the one hand, there are lots of other resources which are available outside that course that actually could be very useful as part of what they need to do as part of the course, and we are absolutely obliged to offer all of those services to every student, no matter what the modality is.
Okay. Well, and again,
Does that make sense?
I appreciate that, and obviously we have rules, SACs, but again, I want to make sure that we're looking at this from a practical point of view.
Absolutely.
That says, if we're designing courses and things that are online, and when you do that, we are cutting our costs and expenses. I want to make sure, though, that we're also seeing the expense follow. If it goes up, that's fine, but if it goes down, I want to make sure that we're capturing those savings, if you will, or expenses in those cases where we're really not using it. We'll deal with SACs and all that, but we're trying to analyze this program.
No, of course, and really this was just an exercise in making sure that you have that full picture.
Okay.
It's really important to remember, even if the student doesn't go on campus and go into the physical library, we have enormous amounts of online library resources, and whether they're digital or whether they're face-to-face, the providers that provide those digital services still ask for money from us.
Chairman Martin.
Just to follow up with that, and it costs what it costs to run a university. I get that. I think Chairman Knight brings up an interesting point. In order to try to track what the true cost of dual enrollment is, when you add that, for instance, could you not, is it not true that you could have a student in Gainesville enrolled in a dual enrollment course at Georgia Southern? Okay. Chances are slim and none that a 16-year-old from Gainesville is ever going to set foot on that course during that course. Doesn't mean that Georgia Southern University does not have the fixed cost of the library and or digital, and you may be getting some seat charges that if you have a student, whoever you're getting the software from, if they're charging you a license on a seat basis as opposed to a global or general license for the university charges you per seat. I get that. I think what Chairman Knight is getting, so that we can more track. It doesn't make the cost of the university less, but when you can track what really dual enrollment costs, if you're, for instance, I know people that are enrolled in master's programs via online master's programs that are getting charged athletic fees at universities. They're clearly not going, okay? So that's not the true cost of that master's program. I realize if they didn't get that money from there, then everybody else might pay 10 more cents. I get that. So it's a zero-sum game. But, you know, in order to track back what does dual enrollment really cost, that's what makes it tough. A few years ago, we gave state troopers a raise, 10 years ago. And when we did that, we had to come up with another million. It was $10 million worth of raises. We had to come up with another $1.5 million. That was at the point where some portion, the add-on to their salary was 15% to go into the healthcare system. And it was the same state troopers. But because we were getting allocated healthcare costs based on salary, you know, that $10 million in salary cost 11.5, and that's what the chairman, I think, is bringing up here. If there's a place where it's seat only, so even if it's not taking the money away, if you could serialize for the committee what the true cost of the dual enrollment is, you know, I'll leave it up to Chairman Knight if he wants to, you know, if he's going to get his pencil sharpened and or his eraser out. But I think that would help, because there's pressure on the cost of the dual enrollment because we're paying full FTEs to the K through 12, and then you're doing this. And with the pressure on that, I think it's important to realize that if not but for the full cost, we'd be funding that in the university system somewhere else anyway. So maybe we pull that funding out and say, but the true cost per hour for dual enrollment is this, and then we see less pressure to take that away from students that are Does that make sense?
It does, and I agree. I mean, I think everyone's on board with trying to really understand what
to track.
Exactly. What are the ways in which we can really understand those costs? Actually, for instance, in Galileo right now, we're actually introducing the digital library,
Right.
digital library. We're introducing a new authentication process called Open Athens, which literally will allow us to understand the usage of really all of the people who access different digital resources, which in many ways is a tool to be able to do the kinds of things that you're indicating. As things stand, I think it's essentially impossible for us to know exactly how many users are using each particular kind of resource, and so consequently it's harder for us to be able to negotiate with vendors to be able to get those kinds of savings, to say, look, this one doesn't get so much traffic, this one gets more traffic. But when Open Athens is in place, we absolutely will be able to do that.
Last real brief question. So most of the software that you have available, is it a named user, or is it a site license? In other words, do you license it for 2,000 students, or do you license it for Chairman Knight and
It's
Chairman
going
Is it a named user, or is it 2,000 seats, the first 2,000 that are on it at any given time? And
it'll vary.
It varies.
The kinds of things that we're using for instruction tend to be based on the number of estimated users. So
Okay.
you know, the capacity of a class, or the size of a campus, or in Galileo's case, we would negotiate that price based on the usage across the state.
Okay, yeah, so not a serialized named user type.
Not in those kinds of
license.
situations.
Okay, fair enough.
And Chairman Martin, I think you bring up a great question, or a great point. And again, let me make sure everyone knows we're trying to make sure that the dual enrollment program is secure. It's financially sound. I mean, and it's most of all, it's meeting its purpose. And I want to make sure everyone knows that it's meeting its purpose. And Chairman Martin brings up a great point, though, going back to, you know, the fiscal part of this. I mean, you guys are later on getting, you know, in the formula credit for these students. I know it's delayed, if you will. So it's one of these things we want to make sure that we're paying for it, and the cost of it is you know, that we're adequately funding it, but we want to make sure that we're just adequately funding it. This is not a profit center. This is not something that if you're building a financial model on making money off of this from a point of view of, you know, that will get you in trouble. You know, this is about making sure we're meeting the purpose and that we're all driving every institution. I don't care if you're private, Technical College System of Georgia, or USG. We're meeting the purpose, and we're doing it efficiently.
Yep.
So, and again, I was very hard on the independent colleges yesterday. So this is not directed just at you. I was very much, you know, that way with them. Obviously, as we speak to the other presenters today, these are hard questions, and we will get some answers to them because, again, we want to make sure we're securing this program.
No, we appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And I do want to just reinforce that efficiency is the name of the game. We are very, we pay close attention to our institutions and their budgets and the spending. I don't know if you've noticed, over the last couple of years, we have significantly decreased the number of fee increases to our students. We have been very diligent about that, and the way we've been able to do that is really making the institutions take a hard look, lob off any of, nice but not necessary services, unfortunately. I mean, sometimes you'd like to provide everything for students, but really in the name of affordability and efficiency, I mean, some of the things we just can no longer do, and so we're paying a close watch to that, and I just wanted you to know that we are
And
doing
I appreciate that. We're here to make sure that all the students have an opportunity at every level, but we're not here to provide all the amenities to
can't.
make life
can't, yeah.
just great. One other question I want to get into, obviously as part of excuse me, the governor's recommendation is looking at doing away with the 9th and 10th grade graders as far as the eligibility for dual enrollment. I've heard offline and anecdotally that's not a problem, especially from an academic track. Would you comment on that?
I actually had a chart. I would say for the majority of our institutions, it would not significantly impact. Thank you. Have that our enrollment. Our freshmen, of the 13,000 that we just mentioned, 200 are freshmen and 1,100 are sophomores. So the majority of the students in dual enrollment are juniors and seniors. Some institutions actually target juniors and seniors. We do have a handful of institutions, I want to say 3 or 4, and I can't call them off the top of my head, that do have the freshman and sophomore populations, and so that it's going to present some challenges for their enrollment. But I think overall you will see that mostly juniors and seniors are the students that are participating in dual enrollment.
And one of my questions is, and again, the whole education system has changed since I came through high school and college. But looking at it from a maturity level of putting a 9th and 10th grader, one in a physical setting that is, a college setting, or putting a 9th and 10th grader in a core entry level college class seems to me, unless they are exceptionally mature,
yeah,
and exceptionally academically advanced. It seems like we're rushing things, and could you comment on that? Is that how does it, from a USG perspective, how does that?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I mean, overwhelmingly, the way in which we're delivering dual enrollment is in a collegiate setting, not in the high school setting. And as you say, it's an unusual freshman in high school who has the maturity to walk into a college classroom, and it's an unusual ninth grader who has the academic maturity to be able to take collegiate level class at that age. It's not unheard of. It is an exceptional student, but it is far from impossible. So I think you're right. I mean, the spirit in which this process is happening to make sure that the way in which dual enrollment is delivered and that it meets the purpose for which it was intended, I think is extraordinarily important. It is the case that that every once in a while you have somebody who's 1 in 100 who has extraordinary talents and having access to collegiate level experiences even at a young age can be a wonderful opportunity for that extraordinarily exceptional student. But I agree, it's by far the exception, not the rule.
And one of the things that we've talked about in this involves Georgia student finance, but and this goes back to purpose and outcomes. Are the students who are dually enrolled in USG institutions, are we meeting that goal of sort of giving them that jump start, and are they able to come in and transfer or take these courses, and these courses then transfer into whatever other, whatever institution that they're going to, go in officially as a college student. Are you seeing the time that these college students, are we seeing a decrease in the time that they're in school and obtaining their whatever degree it is? Are you seeing any other issues that we need to be aware of that would indicate that dual enrollment's not meeting its purpose?
So absolutely, we are certainly seeing increasing numbers of students enrolling as freshmen, enrolling in their their first year as a full-time college student, but enrolling and often having either sophomore or junior status right from the very start. We're seeing this increasingly commonly. I think you're aware that USG is doing a lot of work around the idea of guided pathways. And actually, all of our campuses, as they create those guided pathways, are consciously creating them in such a way that when with students who come in with dual enrollment in mind, because as you say, it is increasingly common that students arrive and they already have collegiate level credit on their transcript, and we want to make sure that that's simply a sort of a seamless continuation of what they've already begun. I can talk to the transferability of these credits, which is extremely strong. I think the recent audit shows that when overwhelmingly students arrive having taken core level classes, we have policies in place that say that those core level classes are seamlessly transferable across our system, both from TCSG schools and from our own. And so if it's a core level class.
Let me ask you this in regard, and again, the same questions I asked yesterday, and I'll continue to ask to TCG and others that present today. Obviously, with TCSG and USG, there's a lot of coordination. But what about outside of that with our private colleges? I think GMC was going to testify today. These are questions I want to know, because if students are taking these classes and they're moving on to or trying to get into another school, and we had an example yesterday, offline, but a kid wanted to go to med school, took a very rigorous dual enrollment, courses, trying to get ahead, but didn't make A's. Had a B and maybe a C or something. And when they got to, in this case, the private institution, the counselor said, he said, I want to be a medical student. I want to go to medical school. And the counselor looked at him and said, I'm sorry, I would have never advised you to take these courses. You have less than A's, and you'll probably never, ever get into med school. Okay? Because you can't erase these grades. And so, again, there are situations like, and that's just an example, but I want to make sure that, again, we're meeting that need, and that the proper, if our higher institutions are grabbing these kids and saying, hey, take it, or going to the high schools and we've got this, is it meeting the needs of the students? So if you could get us some information, the last thing I'll ask you to do some information is not a list of individual, every single core class. Okay, every institution's different. This English is different than this English. But I want to know, what is the category of core classes? Okay?
Sure.
What is it that we're trying to get this high school student to go ahead and knock out a few of the core classes, so when they do start college on an academic track, that they're ahead of the game, versus taking PEs and electives and things like that are probably not core. So again, I don't want 5,000 courses. I want them broken down by a category that we can compare apples to apples, apples and apples across all of the institutions.
We can absolutely do that, and I'll tell you, my office is working increasingly closely with trying to work with high schools and high school counselors, because our picture for this really is that when students are taking dual enrollment classes, that they already think of themselves on a graduating pathway, that they see how those dual enrollment courses that they're taking fit into a continuous program of study which extends past high school into whichever college they end up going to.
And that's what I want to see.
Good. We do too.
But we want to make sure that that's happening, not just we've got them, we're going to give you these classes. Good luck after you get through with your dual enrollment and you hit the next step.
Yeah, we do
All
too.
right. I appreciate. We've got Representative Chokas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to put on another hat, and that was when I was on the state school board. And yesterday I had a group visiting me from Sly County, and we were talking about AP classes. So we've got regular classes, AP classes, dual enrollment, and you were talking about gifted students and how you could move them forward. Where does AP fit into this picture in advancing our more gifted students, and how is that competing with dual enrollment right now? Are we seeing a shift, instead of children taking AP classes going to dual enrollment classes? I mean, how does that fit in the picture? And I want to add one caveat to that. They said that at Sly County, and I'm going to brag a little bit on my school. I said this yesterday in the House. Sly County is ranked number 6 in the state based on CCRPI, and it's the only school system outside of the metro area in the top 10. And they told me, as a matter of policy, that they don't enroll 9th graders in AP classes. They just don't feel to be ready. So if you could maybe throw that in, or maybe we could figure out how that works as far as AP and dual enrollment, and what the trends are. And
Sure.
I greatly appreciate
I can
it.
at least try to do that. So I don't believe that AP courses compete with dual enrollment. I think they really harmonize with them. I think they these two different kinds of learning experiences, they fill slightly different kinds of roles, and depending on the student and where it is that they are trying to, or the academic path that they're trying to pursue, it may well be that that one learning experience works maybe a little better than the other. But I think it very much varies based on the individual student, where it is that they are intending to go, and what their eventual aim is. The aim of the AP curriculum, at least as the way I envisage it, is that it is an advanced placement curriculum. So in other words, it's a curriculum which is an intendedly deeper and more rigorous curriculum than standard high school curriculum. Going through that curriculum then provides for that student a much more rigorous and advanced training as part of their high school experience, which under some circumstances may actually lead to advanced placement credit. So I think when the student goes through that AP course, they have the opportunity to take an AP exam at the end of it. In most situations, they are not required to on many high schools. If they do, and they are able to earn a high enough score on that AP exam, that can, in some circumstances, then lead to credit when they go to university. But regardless, they have been through that experience, and they have the preparation which they are then able to take on when they go to college to study college level material. The dual enrollment class, if you like, is not preparation for college level material. It is college level material, and so these two experiences really serve slightly different purposes from one another. Does that make any sense?
Yeah,
I think
I'm a little confused, but yeah.
Well, I mean, and I think the trouble is that these two experiences are sort of wedded together in our minds. That we, in both situations, we really think of both of them as providing experiences which lead to college credit, and they do, but they lead in slightly different ways. One, I think the best way that I can explain it is a dual enrollment class is not a preparation for college level work. It is college level work. The AP course is a more rigorous curriculum which in many ways prepares one more thoroughly for your experiences in college. And if you master that material to a great enough extent, you are able to use it to earn college level credit.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Again, thank you very much. I appreciate everyone's willingness to jump in and help as we try to figure out some of these issues, and certainly I want to again make sure that everyone knows Georgia's got one of the best higher education systems across the nation. You know, from our university system, our technical college, you know, and even our private independent colleges. I think we're head and shoulders above a lot of people. So again, thank you for what you do, and I also want to say thank you for helping us and helping us get this information so we can make the right decision
Thank you.
as we go forward.
We really appreciate your support, and of course, as you have other questions that we can help with, we'd be more than
Okay.
happy to help you
And
with.
please pass along my concern, if you will, in regards to our hospitals
I will. I got that.
that seem to have a
Got it.
lack of
Got them both.
that have a lack of want to participate in what we're trying to do in Georgia.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the Georgia Public Library System and Julie Walker.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me, Mr. Chairman.
You're glad to have you.
Tracy mentioned that there is an increase in 41.14.3 in our new directions formula that we use to send out state grants to our public libraries, and that is based on the population increase that is projected. The formulas for public libraries, the money that we send out through GPLS to each public library system in the state is based on the number of counties in the library system and their population, and those funds pay for professional librarian positions in all the libraries in the state. They also provide some system services grant, which is basically operations, almost anything the libraries need. There's also 30 cents per capita for library materials in that grant. The libraries particularly are grateful for that because it allows every library in the state to have the funds they need to purchase both traditional books and electronic books for use on iPads and tablets and downloadable audios. So they're very happy with the 30 cents per capita in the formula. The other things under the 41.14 heading are exactly the same and reflect what Tracy mentioned. There is the 2% merit increase both for the positions in our office and for those librarians out in the field, as well as the adjustment for the employer share of TRS for them and the health insurance. You've got 2 pages from me that are clipped together. The top says the capital project request. I think everybody's got that. We have long run a capital outlay program for the Georgia Public Libraries, and typically we send forward within the Board of Regents budget about 10 projects. This year there are 10 projects, about $14.6 million total of a state request. This is a matching program. The maximum state fund grant is $2 million per project. The first $1 million is a 90-10 match. The second $1 million, or anything above $1 million, is a 50-50 match, state and local. And for these 10 projects, the local match is in hand and the projects are ready to go. We always verify those before we send them up to you all. The governor typically does not include any of these projects in his recommendations. They are usually added by the House and by the Senate. And you're probably already hearing from some of those library systems who are very eager to see this funding. These projects have all been on our list for a number of years. These are basically first come, first serve. So it takes a number of years for these projects to work their way to the top of the list. So these projects have been ready for a while and have slowly and steadily been working their way into the top 10. The back of that sheet is our full list, so you'll see again a few more, but those are not the ones beyond number 10 are not in our request for this year. But in the middle of the back of that page are our 5-year bond projects that we typically request and are often funded for each year. We also have the MRR, the Major Repair and Renovation, and again, it's a wonderful way to touch lots of library systems around the state and address some of the critical needs for new roofs, HVAC systems, ADA compliance issues, those sorts of things in our libraries, some life and safety issues in the libraries. And those are a 50-50 match project, and our request this year for MRR is $3 million. We have a new grant called Repurposing Projects, and we've just tried a few model projects on this. This is taking an existing building, whether it's currently a library or whether county has offered up another building that served another purpose. For example, we have a city that has been given a post office building and they want to turn it into a library. So this is really a great way to economically update and modernize libraries, or to put a library in an existing facility. The maximum grant for that we give out is $250,000, and it's a 90-10 match. And our entire list now totals about $2.8 million, so that's our request in that project. And we could fund every one of those projects that is ready to go out in the state. Our final 5-year project is the library technology. Again, typically we request some money to spread out by formula by population to all the library systems, so that they can purchase new or updated technology, computer workstations, printers, mobile labs, so that they can take the library out into the community, some special children's workstations that are specifically targeted to early literacy. And those funds have been really well used over the years, and every single library system gets those, so we're able to keep them on kind of a replacement cycle and update their public access machines, because the public libraries are just heavily used for technology access in many, many of our communities for people who don't have such things at home. So that's
Are you seeing, especially in our rural areas?
Absolutely. Although you would be surprised at how many in the urban areas. I was talking to my Cobb County system yesterday, and they just cannot keep up with the demand for people who don't have a computer at home and who come in to fill out job applications or that sort of thing, or don't have internet access at home. So really, it's all of our systems. But in rural counties, many times it's the only place for free public internet access. They don't have a Starbucks in a lot of counties, so the public library is the place to go.
Or internet at home.
That's exactly right. Absolutely, for any price.
Yeah,
so
it's just not there.
That's
so.
exactly right. The second page I've got clipped is just the list of our MRR requests currently. This is a rolling list. We take these requests all the time. We just keep this going all the time and put on the list. And again, this is a 50-50 grant match, so you'll see the state contribution and the local contribution. So these are the libraries that have projects in our request list right this minute. And the back is the repurposing grants, the ones who have some kind of interior work that they need to do to either update, modernize, or take an existing facility and turn it into a library. So again, that's a running list that we keep with our office.
I want to say thank you. I know I appreciate it. I know what you all do in my district for my libraries, and I'm grateful because I know they're very much a part of the community,
Really are.
and a part of trying to provide access and education. So thank you for what you do.
Certainly. We try to do it very economically, and we try to touch every single county in the state. I'm really proud that we have at least one library in every county in the state. We have 407 total, so there's always a lot going on. So we appreciate everything that you all allocate for us each year.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the committee? All right.
Please
Thank
let
you
me know if
so
I can
very
answer
much.
anything.
Thank you so very much. All right. Next on the agenda is Georgia Military College. All right. Hey, General, how are you doing?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Good seeing you. I'm
Good.
Kurt Rawhut. I'm the Executive Vice President of Georgia Military College. Good seeing all of you on the committee. Sir, what I'd like to do is go down to 7 items on the budget tracker, if I could. The first one is 4121-1, and that is merit-based pay for our next fiscal year to recruit and retain our very best.
Let us catch up with you real quick.
All right.
Okay. Yep.
The next 3 are adjustments. 4121-2 is for the teacher's retirement system adjustment. 4121-3 was for state health benefit adjustment. 4121.4 was for the Department of Administrative Services adjustment. This is insurance, self-insurance, workers' comp. Those are all three were adjustments. The next line, 4121.5, that was for enrollment growth of our prep school, located at Milledgeville, Georgia, of 114 students. It went from 556 to 670, and also for faculty experience. 4121.6, those were QBE adjustments. And 4121.7, that was for the certified teachers increase. Under 4121.8, yes, that was a program change adding both the 4th and 5th grade.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, we do have 2 capital projects as well, if you'd let me to go over those as well.
Yes. Do we have anything up here in regards to presentations, or is that you're just verbally?
Just verbally,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
All right, go ahead.
Capital Project 3833, it's for $1 million. That's for the furniture, fixtures, and equipment for Jenkins Renovation for our prep school.
All right.
And on 3834, $275,000, that was to replace the boiler chiller at our academic building, which has been at 40% capacity for about the last 4 years. So it was, we certainly appreciate that.
Okay. And again, Jenkins Hall and Bolin that's in Milledgeville.
All in
at
Milledgeville.
The preparatory.
The preparatory school, and we also have our main campus, college campus, in Milledgeville as well, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
All right. All right. Any questions on budget? All right. Chairman Jaspers.
Yeah, just thank you, General. On the Jenkins Hall, is that just a relationship to the enrollment growth at the preparatory school? Is that?
Yes, sir, exactly. We've grew 114, and we actually project to increase by another 60 or 70 in our preparatory school next year.
And that's due to you're doing what? 2nd, 3rd grade. You've added that. Is that
4th
correct?
and 5th. We have 4th through 12th grade,
Right.
and 3rd grade for next year.
So that 114 or
Just
third
for the
grade.
just for the 4th and 5th, and for the increase between 6th and 12th. No increase. Nothing is listed here for 3rd grade.
Okay.
And so are there plans to continue as far as the prep school? What
3rd grade is it, and it's capped at 40 students in 3rd grade, 4th grade, and 5th grade,
Okay.
and then it's capped at 100 students, 6th through 12th. That's the capacity we have. We can't grow beyond that.
Any other questions regarding the budget? General, one of the things, and obviously you've listened the last 2 days, we've got something staring us in the face, which is the dual enrollment issue. So as we try to shore this program up, we got to make sure we're meeting its purpose and doing it correctly. One of the things that we're also trying to do is making sure these students are moving on, they're getting these dual enrollment, but tell me a little bit more about the programs that you have as far as your curriculum, your degrees, if you will.
Well, we're primarily an associate producing institution, so most of the courses that our dual enrollment students are taking are core courses. 7 out of 10 of our students that leave us, our motto is start here, go anywhere. 7 out of 10 of our students leave us and go to a USG school. We're in 92% of all the counties here in Georgia, and we teach dual enrollment 3 ways. talked about earlier, online, will go to the school and teach at the school, or they'll actually come to our campus. What we found is if a student lives within 30 miles of our campus, they'll travel to our campus. We've partnered with over 130 high schools. Last year we finished with 3,293 high school students that took classes with Georgia Military College. Most of them are in rural areas. We encourage them to do a hybrid course because we feel that that's the best teaching. I agree with the gentleman that was speaking here earlier about ninth grade possibly being a little early. We have some 10th graders, probably about 295 of our 3293 that are in 10th grade that take it. But we also require, before, probably like many other schools, we require that the parent and the counselor, and sometimes even the principal, sign off on that young man or woman before they take a dual enrollment class. That's for all students. We have seen some very exceptional 10th graders, and we have a pass rate of about 95%. So I would tell you that eliminating 10th grade, if you're asking for my personal opinion, it will probably prohibit those young men and women from receiving an associate's degree, certainly by the time they graduate from high school. We saw 100 high school students receive their associate's degree this past year from GMC.
Okay.
I hope that helps out a little bit.
It does. One of the things that, and you know, yesterday and obviously with the USG, and I'm going to obviously get ready technical college. Again, how are we transferring out? I'm hearing that you know 7 out of 10 go anywhere. So tell me a little bit more about the students, you know, where they're going, what kind of articulation agreements do we have with the other systems?
All right, we have 48 articulation agreements, primarily most of those in the schools here in Georgia. 42 are guaranteed admittance. Those that have taken we're fully SACS accredited. Every one of our courses that our students have left when dual enrollment, we have never heard yet that a school has not taken any of our courses. I have a son myself that did dual enrollment, left here, and even went outside the state of Georgia to the University of Alabama, and every single one of the courses were accepted. We've got others that you know, go to Florida, but primarily most of our students stay in the state of Georgia, and we have not had an issue with any that we have heard of the courses being accepted because we're fully SACS accredited, like most of the other institutions of higher education here in the state.
Okay. One of the things that we've seen is you know, obviously you're going into a lot of these communities. Are there plans to expand? I know you and I have talked about you're unique. You are sort of, we can't figure out what you are yet, so to speak. Public, private. We had a great conversation the other day, but from that perspective, I mean, from the committee's perspective, are you expanding? What are the plans?
We have no plans to expand. And the places we have expanded, we've been asked primarily by elected officials to come into their area to meet a demand. There's a demand in their area for a junior college that is like us. We are open admissions, which means you do not have to have a SAT or ACT score to get in, but merely a high school diploma or GED. We find that there's a lot of students that are poor test takers, and they'll come to us and they'll start with us. We give them free tutoring, small class size. We get them prepared, and they will go off to the USG school that they probably wanted to go to in the first place. And we feel that's exactly where we want to be, is start with us, go on to the school that maybe you wanted to finish up, because we only have a Bachelor of Applied Science. We don't offer a 4-year degree. So we do not have any plans to expand beyond the campuses we have today.
Okay. We talked about third grade students, and obviously coming in next year. and those attendances are qualifying for the QV equivalent funding. So why do the governor's recommendation not reflect or authorize that expansion? Where are we at there?
Great question, Mr. Chairman. That was because the census data is taken in October, and that will determine, we'll know exactly how many students we have, and it usually be in the 20 amended.
And then, you know, how are you interacting? And this is a question I want to make sure everybody, you know, again, purpose, guys, is to make sure these kids are, we're grabbing them, we're giving them a little head start, career, professional path, technical, you know, path, or academic path. So how are we, and how are we interacting with our high schools? I mean, and I don't know, may have to go back with the USG and as technical colleges, you know, come up. How are we interacting with our high schools, and are we out there encouraging? What's the relationship there?
We believe we have a great relationship with all 130 high schools. In fact, we host a one-day summit each year and invite the guidance counselors and the principals and the superintendents to Georgia Military College in Milledgeville to walk over what we do to make your student, their student, successful. We tell them right off the bat that this is your student, that there's taking college courses from us. We have a very good relationship in making sure that they also know exactly where that student is tracking in terms of grades each week. And so we provide on a weekly basis a status report for all the students that we have.
Going back to the other question I'm trying to get for everybody, tell me about online. You had mentioned online school campaign. Let's talk about online courses, digital curriculum, that sort of. Can you get into the details a little bit there, please?
The online, we primarily teach online to dual enrollment students that are in some of the rural areas that, quite frankly, there's just not a brick and mortar facility that this young man or woman can physically drive to, or they may not have a car. And so the high school will approach us and ask us if there's a way that we can set up computers within their school. We'll go down there, we'll set it up for them, and we can teach all of our core courses online. We have academic alerts, we do free tutoring, we have a very active online committee that reviews grades, and I would tell you that out of the, I'd have to go back and take a look, Mr. Chairman, the exact number that are taken online, but I'd say out of the 3,200 plus students, I want to say there's probably about 700 of them that are taking classes online.
Okay. And again, I know we're getting book fees, you know, general fees. So it's one of the things we want to, you know, when you're online with this curriculum, you know, if there's not books involved, tell me about the cost.
We keep costs down because we don't require them to buy books. We do a book rental fee, and we'll use those books over and over for those dual enrollment students that will take the in-seat class. For online, our rates are relatively cheap at $156 a credit hour, far below that of what the state reimburses. We allow them, as the speaker from USG said earlier, all access to library services, free tutoring, interactive tutoring, in order to make the experience, you know, successful and to make sure that the student passes.
But in those online fees, and I'll go back to the question I think Chairman Martin asked. When you have this curriculum and you're doing it online, are you, have you paid for that, or what's the license? I mean, if do you have that as a system and you've already taken care of the cost and putting it out, or is it a per? Are you having a per license or per student license fee?
It's not a per student. It's you're buying a block of registrations of 2,000 or 3,000 or 4,000 licenses. What you're paying for. The fees are really. I would tell you that the cost of the fees primarily go to creating other online courses that may not be created with the in-seat, and other courses that you may be creating down the line.
sorry. It's probably my wife again getting mad at me.
Valentine's.
I know. She's probably wanting to know where we're going to dinner tonight. I hope she made reservations. I'm in trouble. I'm in so much trouble. It's not even funny. Oh, I'm sorry. Anyway, that's I don't like horses. I'm sorry. Tell me a little bit more about as we go into schools. So what is the proportion of, I mean, who are you sending into schools? Obviously, some of the dual enrollment programs, online, school, or at a campus. So tell me about schools, percentage of the ones that we're sending, I guess, GMC faculty into schools. Is that, or are you using high school faculty?
We'll use a combination of both. We'll go in and talk to the superintendent first, and if we can use their teacher to be our adjunct, we will, if they permit it. If not, then we will go out and get our own adjunct or full-time faculty. A lot of the superintendents out there actually see it as a benefit to use their teachers. We will pay them an adjunct fee just like anyone else. So they see it as a benefit.
Okay. Again, as we gather data, could you get some data on that for us as far as what's there and going back to online, you know, in school, high school classes, what are we using as far as professors that are going to actually teach it, or are we using adjunct professors?
Yes, sir, we'll do.
You know, school teachers. And then campus, tell me about campus.
In regards to
Percentage, campus experience, anything that you know.
I think the experience, if you can ever get a high school student to a brick and mortar college campus, I think it's always more beneficial. I will tell you that in some high schools, the high schools would rather you bring the adjunct professor to the school and teach it as a cohort, one whole high school class right there. A lot of times it's just strictly a transportation issue. In some places here in the state, there's bus grants. Our Fairburn campus, just south of Atlanta, there's bus grants that probably take close to 400 high school students to that campus, and they have a great campus experience. In other places where there's not transportation, we'll go to them.
Okay. And one last question for me. GMC is one of the only few, or one or a few of, and I'm trying to make sure I've got that, institutions that still run on a quarter system. That's what we used to do. That's all I remember was a quarter. But I think everybody else is on a semester. So tell me a little bit about that and why not go to a semester?
3 years ago, when we saw everyone go into the semester system, we did a survey of our students, and we had an 86% response rate, and they wanted to stay at the quarter. We thought that they're our customer, they're our student, and it was in line at that time with Governor Deal's Complete College First, one of his goals to get students in and through quickly. We had the opportunity to speak with Governor Deal usually once a year, and he said these are our goals, and as good military folks, we said, roger that, we'll follow your goals.
Okay. And this may be a question for everybody. Transferability, in other words, that's one of the things we want to make sure that students are coming out. So if you're on a quarter system, is there issues with transferring from a quarter system into a semester system?
There is not. All of our courses have transferred in with no issue, and again, with 48 articulation agreements and 42 of the schools are guaranteed admittance, we've had no issues. The one or two times we have, they'll call back, and our chief academic officer will get engaged with his counterpart, and it's resolved.
Okay. All right. Questions with the committee? Chairman Fleming.
Thanks for being here today.
Yes, sir.
Talk to me about the socioeconomic level of most of the students that you cater to, as comparison probably to other universities.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, they probably from the hardest financial need-based student you can possibly think of. We have 56% minority students that are at GMC out of the 13,000 that we have. 55% of the female. A lot of broken homes. I could go into many stories, but from the lower socioeconomic backgrounds within the state of Georgia.
Okay. What about non-traditional students, particularly at some of your satellite campuses? Talk to me about that.
Between 27 and 30% of our students are non-traditional, defined as over the age of 25. They're working. We've got great relationships with the corporation AFLAC. A lot of their employees will come down and take 1 or 2 classes to better their chances for promotion. And we are also partnered with other factories and corporations throughout the state.
How did Trent Brown do in the Super Bowl?
He did fantastic. He covered
Tell everybody who Trent Brown is.
Yeah, so Trent Brown was a great success story coming out of Albany. He was turned away from a number of schools because of his GPA, and he didn't have an ACT or SAT score to come in. So he came to Georgia Military College. We put him in the first year. We put him in our cadet corps. We put them in uniform. We cut their hair. They will say yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am. Mandatory study hall, lights out. They will be an inspection. There'll be a student athlete, student being the first thing, athlete second. Went on later, was very successful at Florida, and then had so far a fantastic NFL career. And the young man was 6'8", about 390 pounds, and probably a gentle giant and a great student athlete and a great ambassador for GMC. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, that is a great story. The reason I want us to continue to support you is because I see you catering to people that the rest of our system does not necessarily cater to exclusively or as well. And you found a niche, and you're helping people that otherwise might not get that help, and I appreciate what you do.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Chairman Jaspers.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is sorry I missed the Regents talk, and it's going to drag you into it too, because I guess the big discussion we're having here is longevity of dual enrollment. I think that's what everybody in this room is kind of thinking about, and higher ed funding. And I guess my question is the common one I'm going to get in Jasper, Georgia. Why are we competing with one another? I understand the chairman's point here, but we got sometimes 2 and 3 education institutions of higher education, the same counties, we're drawing on the same amount of money, and we're competing with one another. And I don't know that the average Georgian appreciates that. I mean, I know we're looking, like Chairman Fleming said, at a different group of people, but I guess I'm struggling with everybody moving in on each other's turf. And I know there's different people in these turfs, but I guess I'd love to hear from the big picture and then from your picture too. I mean, justifying, coming into other communities, and that's something that's bothered me. You and I talked about this last year, and how this works out for the taxpayers too.
I see us as a feeder system and complementary to the USG. We're taking, quite frankly, the students that I don't know if they would even be admitted into USG because they don't have an ACT or SAT score to get in. I don't want to speak for the USG, but we're serving a population that, quite frankly, they don't have many other options. They could go to a tech school, but these young men and women come to us, they're not ready to, they really don't want to go into a tech school. If they did, they'd go. So they come to us because at some point in time they'd like to go to the USG. And 7 out of 10 of our graduates do. So it gives them, I don't want to say it's the last chance or a second chance, but it gives them a chance.
So I guess saying that you're not, I guess because I haven't seen a map in a while, in any other counties that are open access USG schools, others.
Senator Hill asked us that a couple years ago. We looked through, he asked us to take a look at a couple schools that he thought were open access, open admissions, and we did. And the one that was probably the closest was, I think, East Georgia College. And I think even with East Georgia College, and this is dated, I think there still was a requirement to get in. It was some sort of a high school requirement, but I'm not certain of that. So I don't want to speak out of turn here.
Yeah, yes, okay, thank you. I guess because that's my, I know TCSG has, with dual enrollment, has the same pipeline into USG, I would think. I mean, I know they do. I guess that's my concern, and we're looking down the road, this longevity. I know that's what the chairman and all of us are thinking about is on dual enrollment and the longevity of it, and how we can make sure we get everybody in that we need to. But thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Let me, and I should ask this for the USG and to technical college, but one of the things we talked about with the Georgia Finance yesterday was data. And I, for those of you that were there, my comment was you can't manage what you can't measure. So I want to make sure that everyone knows that I want to make sure that we're robust in what we're doing and that we're keeping track and of what these dual enrollment students are doing. What are they doing afterwards? And do you have any kind of, are y'all doing any kind of record or tracking these students now as far as where they're going and again, the technical college, USG, and our independent colleges? That's one thing I'm going to insist on going forward, is that we make sure that we're robust. But if you've got any information you could add now regarding how these students are doing, what were the goals, are they meeting the goals, are they getting out of school sooner and meeting that degree or certification, depending on what route they go?
We are doing some measuring here, Mr. Chairman. I can tell you that we're certainly measuring the number of students that are receiving an associate's degree. This last year was 100. The year before that it was much less. We're also, as students are coming in, we have them sign a reverse transfer initiative agreement, allowing them at some point in time, if they've taken over 23 credit hours at GMC and they go on later on, they can transfer back those courses back to us and also get an associate's degree, because if something happens in their life that they don't follow on with a bachelor's, okay, at least they have the associates to fall back on. So we are doing some tracking there, and we're tracking them where they go. But I'd have to come back with you exactly the breakout of all that.
And I should have asked, or probably a detail I should have gone into USG. I know it's a little bigger and more students, but and then technical college system too. All right. Any more questions from the committee? You got one more? All right. All right.
No, sir. No.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Your light was blinking. All right. Well, I appreciate, thank you for your presentation. And the last item on the agenda is the Technical College System of Georgia, Commissioner Matt Arthur.
Good evening.
How are you doing, Commissioner?
I'm doing well. I did take care of my wife with Valentine's Day. So
yeah, she's probably watching right now. I'm in deep.
and our two daughters, so I'm good.
There you go. All right. Maybe let's talk about the budget, and then we'll go into any other questions that we have, Commissioner.
I want to thank everyone for the support you've given the technical college system over the last few years, and thankful for the governor for the 2% merit raise proposal. That will help us tremendously. I'm going to start on 46.11. under adult ed, and all of our departments are pretty much the same, where you will see the merit-based pay adjustments for recruitment and retention, and then an adjustment at the TRS, and then of course the adjustment in state health actually went down, so that will help us, and the cyber insurance premiums, and DOAS, the premiums for those self-insurance. So total in adult ed, the change is around $170,452. Would you like me to go through it department by department? There's some major changes I know in the next one I need to go through.
Yeah, I just, and if they're just briefly, just
Okay.
hit them and we'll move on. If
Will
you
do.
know. Well, and I say this, if it are there reoccurring items with the TRS and benefits,
Okay.
drop that.
Okay. Yeah,
I think we've all heard that throughout the
Okay.
budget process.
All right. There are reoccurring items in every single department. Under Department Administration, 46.27. We had a one-time marketing fund of $3 million, and that was taken out. We had that last year, and it was a one-time, and so that's the biggest, largest change in that department. Economic development hasn't changed at all. You'll see the small adjustment for TRS, and then Quick Start. The items there are the exact same ones that have been changed due to insurance and TRS. Technical ed, we're also very thankful for the full funding of the credit hours. Ours did go up, and the square footage dollars, and so when you add those two, that's a little over 2.1 million. That's in addition to technical ed, 46.67, and that's the largest adjustment there, with the 2% for teaching, and that's where most of our teaching money comes from.
Okay. Capital projects.
Okay. Capital projects, the first one, MR&R, we've got the governor's recommended $10 million. If you see that's 50.2.3.21. This MR&R money, we couldn't survive without it. When you have a chiller system down in Albany, you definitely need some air conditioning. But this repairs roofs, it repairs ceilings, lights, everything across the entire state. We distribute that money across the state, and that is tremendous. The next item is equipment refresh, which is new equipment, and that's $10 million, which is, you've seen and heard the equipment changes that we've been able to make over the last 4 years have been tremendous, and it's because of the help that you all have given us. But we have to match what's out in the business, and we have business world, and we have been able to do that. There's FF&E money at two projects, one in Camden County and the one in Marietta that's currently being built. And then there are two major projects in there, an allied health building at Wiregrass, which is down in Valdosta, and they are, we are flooded down there. We are at maximum and have a huge waiting list, and we serve well over 1,000 students, 1,500 students just at that one campus. So this has actually been on the books 3 or 4 years, and so we hopefully it will continue to go through, but it's much needed. And then the Carroll County campus, really the Carrollton campus is 50 years old. We are out of room. It is impacted by property, so we can't grow it there. We are having to teach diesel mechanics on large trucks out in the yard. We don't have the space or the ceiling roof in there, so it's not under a Chinaberry tree, but it's pretty close to that. And so we definitely need that huge facility. to be built.
So is you say that's in Carroll? Is that the Carroll County campus, or are you gonna
Yes.
build it on another
Carroll
campus?
County campus. It's the Carrollton campus.
Okay.
And that concludes the capital projects.
Couple of I guess questions regarding the budget, and then some other issues as as the theme continues on dual enrollment. One, I think you made there was a $2 million request for additional marketing funds, but yet we got cut. So what can you tell us a little bit about that, and what will be the effect of the marketing funds, or not having the marketing funds?
Well, what we've done, we didn't know whether we would get those or not, so we have started a lot of digital marketing, and we're seeing great rises in enrollment with the colleges that we piloted that at. This was more of a statewide marketing plan that we've had in place for the last 2 years, and so we were never guaranteed that. So in the meantime, it's given us the ability to catch up with marketing to see, and we feel we're fine with it. We're okay. We understand. We've got another way of doing business, and it seems to have a great impact. That program has been really irreplaceable, just to get our name out there, just so people know there's a technical college close by where they're at. So that has been tremendous over the last couple of years. But now we have seen enrollment grow in the double digits at the colleges we started piloting what we're doing now.
Do you know what colleges those were around the state?
Gwinnett is one. Lanier is another. Those are two of them. Coastal Pines is the third. And we have seen enrollment grow when really technical colleges across the nation are not growing. Usually when unemployment is very low, the population at a technical college goes down also because everyone's working. And we have seen a change in that. We grew 3.6% last year, and we're growing, it looks like right now, at a rate of about 4.1%.
So is that across the board?
It's across the board.
I know as you start to look at Georgia, and obviously Georgia's different, metropolitan areas, rural areas, coastal areas. Are there any differences, and especially in regards to marketing efforts at Gwinnett, Lanier, Coastal Pines? Are you being able to tell the differences in enrollment because of?
Yes. Yeah, we're beginning to see. I'm talking about it at Lanier, 15% type enrollment increases. We'll see how it ends up at the end of the year, but we've seen huge at Coastal Pines. We're seeing an increase, and we're seeing an increase at Coastal Pines in our T&I, in our technical classes, which is what we want to see. So yeah, we're seeing a difference. We're moving it to others. We're seeing a lot more growth in our rural areas than we are our urban areas, even though Gwinnett's been growing at a rate that's really been hard to keep up with over the last 2 years, and it hadn't slowed down. But other than that, Chattahoochee's growing a little bit. We've seen growth there over the last 4 semesters, and it's continued. But inside Atlanta, we've seen enrollment drop.
Okay. Because I was just curious with the different advertising and applying it, especially a concerted effort with marketing funds at the different institutions compared to, and again, we all have them. I've got Southern Crescent, and its enrollment compared to the ones that have had a concerted effort of marketing.
I think it's going to take us a couple of years to really see the difference, because we've seen growth at Southern Crescent also. We just haven't seen it at the rate where we are, where we have put in this digital marketing.
Chairman Jaspers.
Yes, sir. Just following on with, thank you, Commissioner. If you took out dual enrollment, looking at growth, what does that look like? how big a percentage of that is that 4% you're talking about growth at TCSG?
Over half. Over half.
Okay.
We have, we serve more than half of the state. We've got over 26,000 students. We have, that's broken down into 40% are really taking technical classes, 60% are taking general ed. What we are seeing, you know, when you talk about the technical college, we've got a non-traditional student, average age is 27. So with the workforce that's needed in Georgia, the low-hanging fruit is that age from 18 to 25 or 26. So since 2016, we've seen almost a 20% increase in the number of high school students that are finishing high school and coming straight to us. Okay. We also see students that are taking dual enrollment. 81% of them within a year of graduation are continually going to college, whether it's USG or with us. And that's in comparison to those students that don't take a dual enrollment class in the 60, 61%. So we've seen a difference with dual enrollment since we've been there. You know, when it was Move On When Ready and sitting on, I was fortunate enough to sit on the committee when we wrote the bill. Mm-hmm. And we called it Move On When Ready at the time. But it was written to give students an opportunity that may never have that opportunity to take a college class. And so all the barriers that a student may have were taken away, and of course you're seeing that, and we've seen it rise. When you look at the total numbers of high school students that are in the state, it's still a small percentage that are taking advantage of dual enrollment when you look at other states. It is growing here. Students have to have discipline. They have to have goals to go into this. And so it is a different type student that takes this. Our breakdown, we've got about 5.5% that are 9th graders. We've got over 15% that are 10th graders. And so the rest are juniors and seniors.
Okay, Mr. Chairman. So on the digital advertising, since this $3 million's gone, have you empowered or demanded, is probably a better word, all of your outlying folks to have a digital presence and Instagram and all this stuff to reach that group you just described?
Absolutely. We are spreading across the state with it.
Okay. Absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay. And I guess I want to follow back up with I think you answered some of the questions, and obviously with the governor's recommendation, 9th and 10th graders. But I want to make sure we're going back to a technical track. So that 40%, how many of those, and it may be a smaller percentage, but in my mind, you've got a technical track, and then you've got more of an academic track.
I do want to say that most of our programs require an academic track. The skill level that's demanded in business and industry today, you have to have math skills, you have to have communication skills, English skills. So a lot of those programs that students are going in are demanding that general core before. It isn't just an RN. It's also an industrial systems person, a mechatronics person. Avionics demands that general core. So 40% are true technical and 60% are taking our general ed.
So it's a mix. It's,
yes,
it's
sir.
not necessarily a
Right.
Because I would what I'm trying to get in my mind is, you know, if we've got that 9th and 10th grader that's more on a technical track, and you know, I had friends that grew up and they couldn't stand school. I was close to it, but
There's still some out there today.
yeah. But you know, they could go out. They're mechanically inclined. They could go out and it amazed me how smart these guys were, and they could do so many things mechanically that I couldn't even imagine. and you get them on a mechanical, on a track that whether it was working on their car or building something, it was just amazing to watch them. But those are some of those guys that didn't make it through high school.
Absolutely.
So I'm trying to determine that 9th and 10th grade where we can, those folks can get on that technical track, pique their interest in a technical career.
Yep.
Obviously, they do have to have those skills. You can't go out in the world today without some core classes. But at the 9th and 10th grade level, that's what I'm trying to figure out as we look at the governor's recommendation for a total across the board 9th and 10th grade. What is that percentage of that 9th and 10th grade that really we're grabbing with a technical?
Yeah, I don't have that. I'll have to get that for you. That's a great question. For our students that are going, I was in high school a long time. When's a student going to decide to quit? Some of them 4th or 5th grade. They're going to decide. I mean, I'm being serious. You walk into a 4th grade classroom and ask the teacher, they can almost point them out. So a lot of these students have those skills that you're talking about. But most students, if they make it, it's that 10th grade year, because all of a sudden they're bored or they don't see the future in what they're doing, and everybody's different. Everyone's different. And so a lot of them, they turn 16 that 10th grade year too. And so as we kept, one thing you see a bump in those numbers, and I don't know what the breakdown is. That is a great question, because a lot of these students that are coming to us, most of ours are from rural areas. Our CTA programs in the state do an excellent job, but some of them just don't have the money for the equipment, for the things, for all the different things that we have. And so a lot of these young 10th graders are going to jump into those courses and get a thing. But those are the same students, and as you said, they didn't really like school. If dual enrollment's not there for these young students, the odds of them finishing high school and driving to the technical college at that point really go down if they've never been in a college.
And
it's
I agree.
hard for them to do it. So we'll get them when they're 27.
Yeah. Well, we'd rather get them when they're 15 and 16. And to your point, I doubt that 16-year-old is going to drive to the technical college to take an English course or a math course. The point is, if you can grab them with whatever area of interest that, from a technical skill point of view, maybe you got that kid and they're motivated, and then you can say, hey, in order to complete this, you're going to later on have to come back and take the business or English class. That's what I'm trying to, from a point of view, as we look at this policy going forward. And it may not be that many, and that's what I want to try to get some information. But I don't want to lose. I don't want to lose that 9th and 10th grader that is more on a technical path versus an academic path, and then them having to waste 10 years of their life to come back to you at 26 or 27. If we can get them, pique their interest, they'll end up finding out that they are, quite frankly, they were my friends, and they were so bright, so intelligent, and then sometimes so bored. Mm-hmm. But if you got them in the right way, they excelled, and they really shined. And quite frankly, in the demand that we're seeing in these high demand areas, some of those guys are really needed. And if we can get those guys at 15, 16, these guys can in 2 or 3 years can be coming out, quite frankly, with a very high paying career, a technical career, skilled that they need. And I think that makes them much better.
And our students, there's a lot of students like that that know what they want to do and know what they enjoy, whether it's in cybersecurity. Had the advantage of being able to go to Israel last year, and you go into some of those cyber companies, and the age you see sitting around, the age is 15, 14, 15, they're sitting in bean bags.
Yeah.
And that's who's doing the cybersecurity.
All right. Well, we can't. I still don't understand that, but again, I would like for you to, to quickly, if we could, start turning around some of that information. I would be remiss if I did not, and you heard this during the budget hearings. Chairman Smith, Lynn Smith, was very concerned about the German, I think, apprenticeship program, and I know that there are very few students there.
About 7 sophomores in the state.
But that is a very rigorous apprenticeship program that
Absolutely.
I think is probably one that we could expand on. I just want to make sure that, as limited as it is now,
I want to say we have 7 sophomores this year, but there's 21 juniors who were sophomores last year.
Okay.
So it's growing. That program is growing. It is just as it is the exact same program they do in Germany. So these are some of the most highly skilled students that are coming out.
And again, that is based upon a dual enrollment program, right?
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right.
And again, these are some of these little things that I want to look at. They may not be large in dollar amount, which in this case could be something that, as we look at that may be something we want to make sure we take into account as we move forward. Because I know my neighbor, the school superintendent for Spalding County, his son is one of those, and he cannot talk any more highly than it's the best program. I mean, they are so pleased with it. Those are the things I don't want to hurt. We want to make sure we foster great programs like that.
It takes a special student.
So, questions? Just a few more. If a dual enrollment student is only taking courses online in a semester, how does the student fee, how does the student fee paid for by the program help them? In other words, again, I'm going back to some of these questions I'm asking.
About 38% of our students took at least one course. That was 50% online. That money still pays for, of course, all the counseling and advising health. The same thing that Dr. Denley mentioned for SACS accreditation that you have to have. You also have to remember that we've had to buy that network, and we have to keep the bandwidth and the infrastructure. So that money goes for that also, for those online courses. We don't have a lot of fees. We're $89 a credit hour across the board. So we don't have a lot of money in fees. But that money that we receive, if you're not buying a textbook, you're still buying bandwidth. You're still buying the ability to provide those courses.
And one last question, maybe get the data. I'd like to see what we're teaching, or versus in school, online. What professors are going back into the high schools.
You want some percentages?
Yeah, I'd like to make sure we're looking at. I'm trying to get a handle on.
Well, 52% of our students took at least one course in a high school. 52%. 65% took at least one course at TCSG. And that's fall 2018, but it follows the patterns that we've had. So our students take courses at the high school and on our campus, but 52% took at least one course on a high school campus, and 65% took at least one on a TCSG campus.
Okay. If you'll get a little bit more of that data in
Will
detail,
do.
I'd appreciate that.
Will do.
Excuse me, I'm texting my wife that I'm going to take her to dinner tonight. She just there's a she. Yeah, no, I'll do better than that. I know, and we'll wrap this up. But there are a lot of high demand areas in Georgia as we continue to grow. A lot of those areas that are being fulfilled, and we're looking at addressing them. One of the areas that I want to go back to is aviation. I know that we're continuing to make investments across the state in that area. One of the things that we got in sort of the briefing, and you and I spoke about it, was looking at the different areas where we have these aviation programs. One of them was Northwestern. You and I spoke about, that is a campus that is doing very well.
Mhm.
Quite frankly, if we had another instructor up there, we would be able to add
That's
probably
right.
another
We had the
class.
operational money, we could almost double that.
So is that been a request there? Because when
Well,
you say
it's
double,
different monies. We don't have the operational money. We don't earn money for 2 years after the program's put in. So it's just, it's operational money. The building was built to run more cohorts than we're running. We just don't have the money to fund an instructor.
but going back to that, as far as capacity, okay, we've got enough to double. In other words, if we had an instructor there, we could add another cohort
Right.
and start, in essence, doubling what we're putting out of there. And I know by some of the past awards that were conferred, it was one of the highest. It's doing very well. So, from your perspective, is that something that would be a good return on investment? That seems like
It absolutely would. The ROI on that would. The students are up in that area. We feel like we've got the equipment, we've got the space. So yes, that would very much be a good return on investment.
And again, we're looking at this need. We're seeing it all across Georgia. Georgia's, again, leading the way, and we're seeing a aging demographic in this area.
Yeah. And that would not take away from any of our other programs or what's proposed at all with the number by doing that.
One last question, and this is something though that as we look at this aviation, the aviation maintenance programs here, Atlanta Technical College.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if I'm not mistaken, it's listed as AMT, but we have lost that certification was lost.
That was lost years ago. We are in the process of, we've been working close to 2 years to gain that back. It was lost, I don't know, before I got there. And so we are going through the FAA, and everything is going well, as long as the FAA is working. But it is going well to get them back where they were at that time, and Delta and other airlines are working with us at that site to make sure of that. But that program is working hand in hand with South Georgia programs and the Central Georgia program and the FAA to get back. So we're on the way to do that. Everything's been positive so far. We've got a couple other programs that operational money would double. That's at Savannah Tech and at Central Georgia. Both for sure would have the space and capacity to do that with.
But in regards to some of the information that was sent in, it was listed as an AMT program, but it is not. You got avionics.
They teach avionics, not A&P. That's right.
All
They're
right.
teaching avionics, electronics.
Because I know that there are several areas. Obviously, one of the high demand areas in the state is coming out of Hartsfield. I mean, whether it's Delta, whether it's any of the other airlines.
Right.
I grew up in an area that, quite frankly, a lot of my friends' dads were the mechanics. They were the ones that were working on the planes, and even some of my friends in that sort of area. What are we doing with some of the other technical colleges there as far as their AMT programs? Because, how do I say this? Location-wise, geographically to the airport, and just traditional-wise, you have a lot of folks that have grown up. The aviation in Hartsfield is a part of the family. From not only Southern Crescent, but I guess would it be out of LaGrange, Carrollton, what's the,
Right, Coweta County, up
yeah,
through
Coweta.
that area.
So, my question is, where are we there on those schools regarding AMT programs?
We're doing research right now. We can't forget about the Athens area either. I know that airport is talking about wanting to add it. West Georgia is a prime location for one of these. Southern Crescent is a prime location, especially with it just being south of the airport there. So we have several. They all have to be approved by the FAA. They are some of the most expensive programs that we try to put in, and that always will, of course, play a role.
Well, I'm just curious because I'm getting from that area. You know, I know with the college and career academies, they have been on this for a couple of years, trying to, I guess, be the feeders. And obviously, you want to go fish in a pond that's got a lot of fish, if you will. You know, your catch rate goes up as far as getting these kids in there that are going. So I'm sort of curious because I know there's been some efforts in my area. And it doesn't seem to be, especially on that southwestern quadrant of Atlanta that is traditionally has served Hartsfield, has been a huge employee base from all the way from pilots all the way down to, you know, the mechanics, the folks that are keeping those airplanes running. But it seems to me that they're, for whatever reason, those programs aren't taking off and getting off the ground, so to speak. And I know there's been significant efforts over the last 2 years there, and I'm very curious why we're focusing on we're focusing on a lot of the other areas when that's sort of a target-rich environment, if you will, from being in a location that is close to Hartsfield that has traditionally served it. Not only that, 85 going down, I think Pratt and Whitney is there. So I'm curious about that because again, as I look at the demand that has I'm being told that's been done from the studies, we won't be able to fill the number of AMT, you know, qualified personnel, you know, that come out of these programs to keep up with the folks that are retiring. And
we're not against putting them wherever they're going to be successful. And I haven't had one recommended to me from that area. That is an area, of course, we're looking at. But we did meet down below there. There's an airport down there that has some high school kids that come in and work, and we pulled the instructor from South Georgia up and gave them information about what they would have to do. We have met with them twice. That was probably 3 years ago.
It's sort of stalled, and that's what I don't understand. That was a
put
private.
on
Yeah.
There was stuff they had to do to bring it up, and the instructor from South Georgia had laid it all out for them, what had to happen. But yeah.
Maybe we could look into to that because I think that southwest corridor, if you will.
Yeah.
Especially, you know, getting 85 Columbus on up 85, where certainly we have aviation needs, and certainly Hartsfield, probably one of the largest demand areas from all the airlines that are there.
Fourth in the nation.
So
as far as need.
Let's see what we can do to
Absolutely.
look at that, please.
Be glad to.
Commissioner, question. Who's 5? Is it Representative Chokas?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner,
Yeah.
I just wanted to add to Chairman Knight's comments about aviation and just remind the audience and share with you that South Georgia Tech and Americus Georgia has a really good avionics program. And you were talking about Delta and its needs. Please don't forget that we also have Gulfstream. We also have, in my part of the country, Thrush Aviation, which builds crop dusters. We also have Warner Robins. And then last but not least, being a pilot myself, General aviation. We have mandatory annual requirements that need to be filled, and these students that graduate do that. And most of the major airports, you know, they provide that service. You can go to PDK or you can go to Charlie Brown. You can get it done at Jimmy Carter Regional in Americas and so forth.
The
And so-
majority of our students are hired at the places you just mentioned.
Mm-hmm. So it's not only Delta, it's all these others that contribute to the economy of the state of Georgia, and I commend the technical college for instructing these students and putting them in aviation. And I would be remiss if I did not add this, that Sutherfield in Americus, Georgia was the airport where Charles Lindbergh actually bought his first plane and learned to fly. And it's one of two of the oldest continuously operating airports. And I soloed at the same place. So just wanted to share that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, well, thank you, and I know you are a pilot, and I know the initiatives that we've taken with aviation. It's not only the existing large commercial industries that are here, but you know, there was a push last year that we're extending runways. I think we're 13 across the state of Georgia. It's been an initiative to make sure that you know, that's part of our economic development, especially in I think 10 of them or so are in rural areas. You know, I know Spalding County's got hopefully we're on the route to building probably the newest airport in the state of Georgia, as you know, as far as a local airport, and that's another way we're leading in aviation. So there's going to be some more demand there, and more opportunities, quite frankly. So anyway, any other questions from the committee? All right. I do appreciate your patience with these long hearings, and the information is we're trying to gather and certainly deal with some issues that are out there that we're facing. We will have another meet. When is our? Have we? I'm told we don't have it scheduled yet, but please be aware we'll probably Monday or Tuesday of next week have another hearing, and you know, hopefully we'll be wrapping up pretty soon next week with the big budget here. So with that, we're adjourned. Thank you for your patience.